Welcome back to another MOTOBOB video where today we've got hold of some very exciting spy shots for the learner market. You see, I reckon the Svartpilen 125 has to be the best looking bike you can currently get on an A1 license, and from what we can see here, it looks like it's about to get a major update. On top of that, a new sibling for the Svartpilen has been also spotted out testing, and so in this video we'll go over the 6 things that you need to know about this super cool little street bike. Now, the basic premise of many of Husqvarna's bikes is to take the mechanicals of a KTM model, with KTM being their parent company, and then apply some more snazzy, scandy styling to help it appeal to a different audience. You know, like people who don't like orange. The Svartpilen and Vitpilen 701s, for example, are based on the KTM 690 platform. The 401s are based on the 390 Duke, and then in 2021 we had the Svartpilen 125, which is of course based upon the 125 Duke. They just gave it a bit of that retro come spaceship type look that for me works beautifully well across pretty much anything Husqvarna put their pen to. Now, the Svartpilens tend to go for this slightly scrambler inspired spec with semi-knobbly tires, spoke wheels, a tall flat handlebar for an upright riding position, and then rugged hardware like the rack on the tank. But the Vitpilens on the other hand, so the 401 and the 701, have a slightly more sporty riding position with a lower clip-on style bar, and that's also reflected in the tire choice and the general aesthetic. But up until now, there's been no Vitpilen 125 on the market, so just the Svartpilen. But these pictures confirm that there's one in testing, and so I'd expect the launch to be imminent. It certainly looks pretty far along the development cycle with all the bodywork in place, and it just needs a bit of paint really. I guess the question is whether it'll actually be any good though. You know, the more sporty riding position really suits the 701. I love that bike when I tested it because it's super slender, and so even though it doesn't make that much power, you can still have loads of fun on the road, and the slightly tucked in ergonomics only add to the feeling of speed. A 125 though is probably going to spend a lot of time riding in the city, and so I'd rather have my back upright and my weight on the saddle, not on my wrists. But of course, we'll have to reserve full judgment until we actually get to ride one, but let me know what you think down in the comments. Now, the engine looks to retain the same fundamentals, so a 125cc liquid cooled single cylinder with a 6-speed gearbox. And I wouldn't expect any massive gains from the performance figures because you're kind of limited with what you can do on a learner bike like this. So the current output of 15 horsepower at 9,500 RPM and the 12 Newton meters of peak torque at 7.5 will most likely be carried over. But you can see from the pictures that the engine casings are different, and there's also a new exhaust system with a larger catalytic converter, and so it seems like a lot of effort has gone into meeting the stricter emissions regulations that are about to come into place in the form of Euro 5B. Now, it doesn't look like the final exhaust because the finish is still looking a little crude, but it seems as though they're getting rid of the silencer on the side and perhaps going with an underslung system that will help to keep the center of mass slightly lower. It's certainly in line with what we've seen so far on the 125 Duke, the same platform that these Husky bikes are based on, and an update to that bike has been spotted out testing with a similar looking exhaust. Now, to accommodate this larger box under the belly of the bike, we can also see a significant update to the swing arm. It's got more of a banana shape that gives a little more space under there, and also it gets this brace on the left hand side. Again, this sort of design has been spotted on a bunch of new KTMs where bigger cats are having to be used across the board to comply with regulations. Another change for that swing arm is that the rear shock appears to be mounted off to one side instead of centrally, presumably for packaging purposes, but I would expect the fork and shock to be pretty similar to the adjustable WP Apex equipment on the current model. Certainly a good thing in my book because KTM's in-house brand makes some great stuff, and it really does enhance the riding experience of some of these smaller capacity bikes, which are often overlooked when it comes to good hardware. Now, although the frame is still a steel trellis, it'll have some tweaks to account for the new swing arm and shock position, and the subframe also looks to be a new design with less bodywork at the back there, exposing it for the camera. Brakes appear to be from Bibre again, so that's the more affordable sub-brand of Brembo, with a single 4-pot radially mounted caliper at the front, although it has been flipped from the left-hand side of the wheel to the right. I'm not sure what the rationale would be for doing that, so if you have any ideas, leave them down in the comments. Styling is a big deal on these bikes. It's their USP really. And so Husqvarna appear to have evolved it a little, bringing it up to date and making it fresh while still retaining some of the key styling features. So there's some new bodywork in the form of some fork guards and a fly screen, which could be accessory fit. There's larger radiator shrouds at the front there, a slightly different take on the tank shrouds with a new smoother shape to those flanks that sort of jut out, a bigger belly pan, a lot less bodywork on the tail section, and then a bit of practicality with a larger rear mudguard and a standard license plate holder, so that should provide a little more protection from rear wheel spray, which will be welcome news to anyone considering one of these bikes for commuting. As for the more sporty Vitpilen, well, it gets the same tank and radiator shrouds, but overall it looks a little more svelte without the fly screen and belly pan. And then there's the cast wheels, which look to be straight off the Duke, and a sort of thick looking front mudguard design. Both cool looking bikes, especially for the learner segment, but out of the two, the Svartpilen looks the best for me with the slightly more rugged vibe. Also visible in these shots is a new TFT dash, with the current generation getting this big round thing with a digital readout in the middle. It's not my favorite feature of this bike, even though it works totally fine. For me, it's welcome news that there'll be a more modern display, which I guess will take similar hardware to the 5-inch TFT on the 390 KTMs. And I tested out the 390 Adventure a little while back, and the screen was really very good, especially for a budget bike. Like the external aesthetics though, Husky have a knack of transforming the software into something more visually appealing, so just take a look at the Northern 901 for example. It's got a beautifully simple and easy to use layout with their punchy color schemes and signature minimal style. So hopefully more of the same on these two bikes, and you'd also expect some of the phone connectivity features that come with the 390s, like call handling and navigation prompts. At this stage there are no clear indications of a launch date, but given that it's pretty much production ready, you'd expect it to be out for the 2023 riding season. Price wise, it ought to be similar to the current generation at $4.5 grand, although prices do tend to creep up a couple of £100 when bikes get an update. For context, $4.5 is the same as the current 125 Duke, although you are getting a much better looking bike with the Husky in my opinion. Probably the closest equivalent in terms of the competition would be the retro styled XSR 125 from Yamaha. That bike comes in at just shy of $5 grand, so the Husky looks like a bit of a bargain, and a contributing factor to them hitting that price point is most likely the fact that all KTMs from the 390s down are built in India by Bajaj. As always, I'd love to know what you think of it though down in the comments below. Would you go for one of these if you were on an A1 license, or is there a better alternative that I've not mentioned? Let me know what you think, and if you're new here and you want to see more videos like this, hit subscribe and I'll catch you next time.